The road dust kicked up in small clouds every time the wind hit the loose gravel scattered across the dry dirt ground. Chloe had been standing there for hours, or at least it felt that way, tightly gripping the worn strap of an old suitcase that weighed more than it should for a 7-year-old kid. The leather was cracked in several places, and one of the latches didn't catch properly, forcing her to hold it with both hands to keep the clothes inside from spilling onto the ground. The shack behind her was a wreck. Half the roof caved in, and the wall planks so rotten you could see right through the gaps. Chloe didn't understand why her stepmother had brought her to this awful place, so far from everything, where there was nothing but trees, tall weeds, and a silence that hurt her ears. The woman had said she was going to fetch water from the creek and told her to wait right there without moving, promising she'd be back soon. But that had been ages ago, back when the sun was still high in the sky. Now the sun was setting, painting everything orange and purple, and the stepmother still hadn't returned. Chloe felt her stomach rumble with hunger and her throat scratch with thirst. She scanned the surroundings, searching for any sign of the woman among the trees, but only saw the wind swaying the branches of the tall pines surrounding the shack. The birds had stopped singing, and the only sound she heard was her own heart pounding too fast inside her chest. She thought about dropping the suitcase and running after her stepmother, but she was terrified of getting even more lost in this strange place. She considered going inside the shack and hiding until someone showed up, but the structure looked dangerous, ready to collapse at any second. So she stayed put, her bare feet covered in dirt, feeling the evening chill start to bite at her thin, unprotected arms. That's when she heard the sound of an engine approaching. Chloe snapped her head toward the noise and saw a black car emerge around the bend in the dirt road. Her heart hammered even harder, because she didn't know if this was good or bad, if it was someone who would help or someone who would do something worse. The suitcase slipped slightly in her sweaty hands, and she gripped it tighter, ready to bolt if she needed to. The car slowed as it approached and stopped right in front of the shack, kicking up a cloud of dust that made Chloe close her eyes and cough. When she opened them again, she saw a man getting out of the car. He wore a gray suit that was dusty on the knees and a slightly crooked blue tie. His dark hair was slicked back, and his eyes were light, a shade she couldn't quite make out in the orange light of the late afternoon. The man looked at the ruined shack, then at the old suitcase in her hands, and finally at her face. Chloe saw something in his eyes she had never seen in any adult's eyes before, something that looked like genuine concern, not the fake kind people put on when they want to seem nice. He slowly crouched down, bending his knees until he was at her level, and held out his open hand in the air between them. The hand stayed there waiting, and Chloe didn't move. She didn't know if she could trust this stranger in a dusty suit who had shown up out of nowhere right when she was alone and scared. "Are you here all alone?" His voice was low and careful, as if he was afraid of scaring her further. Chloe nodded slowly, never taking her eyes off him, gripping the suitcase strap so hard her knuckles turned white. "And the person who brought you, where is she?" he asked, looking around as if expecting to see someone hiding among the trees. "She left," Chloe replied, her voice thin, almost swallowed by the wind rustling the dry leaves on the ground. The man took a deep breath and ran a hand across his face, leaving a streak of dirt on his cheek. He looked again at the crumbling shack, at the cloth sacks lying on the ground filled with something she couldn't identify, and finally back at her. "Is she coming back?" he asked, his voice more serious this time. Chloe hesitated to answer because she wasn't sure. Her stepmother had said she'd be right back, but she had also said a lot of other things that never happened. She had promised to take care of her after her mum was gone for good, but all she really did was yell and leave her hungry. She had said things would get better, but they only got worse until they ended up in this horrible place in the middle of nowhere. "I don't know," Chloe mumbled, looking down at her dirty feet. The man was silent for a time that felt like forever, just watching her with that worried expression that made her chest feel tight in a strange way. Then he asked, his voice softer, "What is your name?" "Chloe," she answered quietly. "Chloe, that's a beautiful name," he said with a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "My name is Ethan, and I'm not going to leave you here alone." "I can't do that." The words came out firm and decisive, carrying a weight she didn't fully understand, but that somehow made her want to believe him. Ethan stood up slowly, his knees cracking, and held out his hand again, this time with more insistence. "Come with me. I'm going to take you somewhere safe where you can eat and get some real sleep, he said, and his hand remained suspended in the air, waiting for a decision Chloe wasn't sure she was capable of making. She looked at the shack behind her, at that terrible place that was still everything she knew right now, and then looked back at the man in the dusty suit who was promising things too good to be true. Her stepmother always said you shouldn't trust strangers, but her stepmother had also abandoned her here alone. No water, no food, nothing. What if she comes back and I'm not here? Chloe asked, her voice trembling with fear. Ethan crouched down again, meeting her eyes. Those dark eyes filled with a pain no child should ever have to carry. If she comes back, I will explain where you are and how to find you. But right now you need care and a warm place, he said, looking deep into her eyes in a way that made her feel like he was telling the absolute truth. Chloe felt her throat tighten and her eyes sting, but she didn't let the tears fall. She had learned that crying never helped anything. It just made her stepmother angrier. She slowly released the suitcase, letting it drop onto the dirt ground, and placed her small, trembling hand in his large one. Ethan closed his fingers carefully, as if she were made of fragile glass, picked up the suitcase with his other hand, and started walking toward the car. Gabriella stumbled on the loose gravel, but he held her steady so she wouldn't fall. She looked back one last time, watching the cabin shrink and grow distant with every step, and felt a tightness in her chest, mixed with a strange, unfamiliar relief. It was as if she were leaving behind not just a place, but an entire piece of pain that no longer fit inside her. The car was huge and gleaming inside, with soft leather seats that Gabriella had never seen in her life. Everything smelled new and clean, so different from the moldy cabin and the filthy places she had lived with her stepmother recently. Andrew opened the back door and carefully placed her old suitcase on the seat, treating the worn, ugly thing as if it were precious. "Come sit up front with me," he said, pointing to the passenger seat. Gabriella struggled to climb in because her legs were too short and the seat was too high. She had to brace herself against the dashboard to get leverage, and when she finally managed to sit down, she sank into the soft leather. It was so unlike anything she had touched lately that it felt unreal. Andrew got in on the other side and started the engine, which purred low and steady, filling the silence with an almost comforting sound. "Are you hungry?" he asked, buckling his seatbelt and reaching over to fasten hers too. Gabriella nodded because she was starving. She hadn't eaten anything since the morning when her stepmother had tossed a piece of stale bread onto the table. Andrew grabbed a paper bag from the dashboard and handed it to her. "There are cookies inside. Eat as many as you want," he said with a small smile. Gabriella slowly opened the bag and saw the sandwich cookies inside the clean, fresh-smelling package. She took one and bit into it, feeling the sugar melt in her mouth and tasting a sweetness she had completely forgotten existed. "Slow down, or you'll make yourself sick," Andrew cautioned, glancing at her as he drove down the bumpy dirt road. Gabriella tried to eat slower, but it was difficult because her body demanded more and more, as if making up for all the days of accumulated hunger. The car bounced over the bumps, and she held the package tightly so she wouldn't drop it. They left the dirt road after a few minutes and hit a wide, smooth-paved road where other cars sped past in both directions. Gabriella watched everything through the window with wide eyes, seeing houses appear gradually, first small and simple, then larger and more beautiful, with front lawns and white picket fences. "Where are we going?" she asked, wiping her crumb-covered mouth with the back of her hand. "To my house," Andrew replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "Is it far?" she wanted to know. "About 20 minutes from here. It's in a neighborhood outside the main city area," he explained. Gabriella was quiet for a while, chewing another cookie and watching the landscape change outside. The houses grew bigger and more spaced out, and the lawns became greener and filled with flowers she didn't know the names of. "Why did you stop?" she suddenly asked, turning her face to look at him. Andrew took a moment to answer, as if choosing the right words in his head before speaking them aloud. "I was coming back from a meeting and took that road because it's a shortcut I usually use. I saw you there alone and couldn't just drive past without stopping to see if you were okay," he explained, his voice sounding tired. "But you don't know me," Gabriella said, furrowing her brows. "I don't need to know you to know that a kid shouldn't be alone in a place like that," Andrew replied, his voice firmer than before. Gabriella didn't know what to say, so she remained silent, looking at her dirty hands in her lap. The car turned onto a wide, tree-lined street with enormous trees on both sides that formed a green tunnel overhead. The houses were huge, with wrought iron gates and gardens so well kept they looked like paintings. Andrew slowed down and stopped in front of one of them, pressing a button on the dashboard that made the gate open slowly with a low motor sound. Gabriella's eyes widened, seeing the enormous house in front of her with large windows, reflecting the orange sky of the late afternoon, and a lit porch with wooden chairs and hanging plant baskets. "You live here?" she asked, incredulous, unable to close her mouth. "Yes, I do," Andrew replied, driving slowly inside and parking in the covered garage. He turned off the engine and paused for a second, taking a deep breath as if preparing himself for something. Then he got out and went to her side, opening the door and extending his hand again. "Come on. I'll show you the house and the room where you'll sleep tonight," he said. Gabriella got out of the car, feeling her legs tremble slightly from a mix of exhaustion and nervousness. They entered through the kitchen door, which opened with a soft click. The light turned on automatically, and Gabriella stood frozen in the doorway, staring at everything with her mouth open. The kitchen was bigger than the entire cabin she had been left in. There was a large, dark wood table in the middle, with 6 chairs around it, stainless steel pots hanging from a metal rack on the wall, a huge gleaming stove, and a massive, silver refrigerator that took up half the wall. "Are you really hungry?" Andrew asked with a small smile when he heard her stomach rumble loudly. "I'm going to heat up some real food for you." "Cookies aren't a meal," he said, opening the refrigerator and taking out glass containers. Gabriella stood in the middle of the kitchen, unsure what to do or where to sit. Everything seemed too expensive and too clean for the dirty hands she had. "Sit down in that chair while I prepare this," Andrew said, pointing. She sat on the edge of the chair, back straight and hands in her lap, watching his every move as he put rice, beans, and a generous piece of meat into a pan. The smell grew stronger, and she felt her mouth water and her stomach clench with desire. Andrew served a generous portion onto a deep plate and placed it in front of her, along with a fork, a knife, and a glass of cold orange juice. "Eat slowly so you don't get sick, okay? Your stomach isn't used to food like this," he repeated, sitting on the other side of the table. Gabriella picked up the fork with a trembling hand and began to eat. Savoring the taste of the hot, seasoned food she hadn't had in so long, she barely remembered what it was like. Every bite seemed to heal a small piece of the pain she had been carrying inside. The beans were perfectly salted. The rice was fluffy and the meat was tender, melting in her mouth. Andrew sat across the table, watching her eat without saying anything, just observing in silence, as if trying to understand the extent of the abandonment this small child had experienced. When she finished, he took the empty plate and carried it to the sink, where he began washing it with hot water and soap. "Now I'll show you where you'll sleep, and tomorrow we'll talk about the rest," he said, drying his hands on a white towel. Gabriella followed him out of the kitchen, crossing a huge living room with leather couches and a huge flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, then climbing a wide staircase with a polished wooden railing to the second floor, where there was a long hallway with several closed doors on both sides. Andrew opened one at the end of the hall and turned on the light, revealing a spacious room with a queen-sized bed covered in a light blue comforter, a wooden desk against the wall, and a large window with white curtains. "You can stay here for now. The bathroom is that door right next to it," he said, pointing. Gabriella walked in slowly and looked around, unable to believe she was going to sleep in a place like this. "Are you serious?" she asked, turning to look at him, her eyes shining. "I'm serious, Gabriella. This room is yours while you're here," Andrew confirmed. "Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest, but right now you need to take a shower and rest, because it's been a long day." Gabriella turned to him, and for the first time since she had been abandoned on that dirt road, she felt the urge to cry, not from sadness or fear, but from something like hope mixed with such immense relief that it physically hurt her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking and her eyes filling with tears. Andrew smiled and stepped into the room, placing a hand lightly and carefully on her shoulder. "You don't need to thank me, Gabriella. You deserve to be in a safe, warm place, and no one should have left you like that," he replied, his voice low and sincere. The morning sun streamed through the large window, hitting Gabriella directly in the face, and she woke up startled, unsure where she was. Her heart pounded, and she sat up in bed, looking around with wide eyes until slowly, the memories of the day before returned one by one. The man in the suit, the black car, the huge house, the warm food. It was all real, not a dream, as she had thought for a second. Gabriella got up slowly, feeling her body ache, and went to the window, pulling the white curtain aside. Outside there was a huge lawn with short green grass, colorful flowers planted in neat beds, tall trees swaying in the morning wind, and a small blue bird perched on a thin branch, singing loud and clear. It was so different from anything she had ever seen that for a moment she thought she was still asleep. She heard footsteps in the hallway outside, firm, calm steps that stopped in front of her bedroom door. Then came a light knock on the wood. "Gabriella, are you awake yet?" Andrew asked from the other side, his voice still rough with sleep. "I'm awake," she replied, stepping away from the window. He opened the door slowly and entered, already dressed in dark jeans and a long-sleeved light blue shirt. His hair was still wet from the shower, and small drops ran down the back of his neck. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Yes, I did," she answered softly, looking at her own bare feet. "That's good. So I'm happy to hear that," he said. "Come have breakfast with me. Afterward, we need to talk about some important things," he added. And she felt her stomach clench with nervousness because she didn't know what he was going to say. Gabriella followed him out of the room, stepping slowly down the long hallway, descending the wide staircase while holding tightly to the railing, and entering the kitchen, where the large wooden table was already set with a clean white tablecloth. There were freshly baked rolls in a basket, toast piled on a plate, yellow butter in a glass dish, strawberry jam in a small bowl, thinly sliced cheeses, and a tall pitcher full of orange juice. "Sit here and eat as much as you want. Don't be shy," Andrew said, pulling out a chair for her. Gabriella sat on the edge of the chair and looked at the full table, unsure where to start. "You can take whatever you want." "You don't have to wait for anything," Andrew said, sitting next to her and picking up a roll. Gabriella slowly reached out and took a piece of toast, which she covered with strawberry jam using a small spoon. She bit into it and felt the sweet and tart taste explode in her mouth simultaneously. Andrew poured orange juice into a glass for her and another for himself. They ate in silence for a few minutes until he wiped his mouth with a napkin and turned to look at her. "Gabriella, I need to ask you some questions, and you need to answer honestly, okay? I won't be mad about anything you say," he began, his voice serious but calm. She stopped chewing and nodded, feeling her heart race. "Do you have any living parents?" he asked. "My dad died when I was really little." "I don't remember him," she replied softly. "And your mother?" he continued. "My mom died about 2 years ago. She got sick and never got better," Gabriella explained, feeling her throat tighten with the memory. "And after your mother died, who took care of you?" Andrew wanted to know. "My dad had remarried before he died, so his wife became responsible for me." "Her name is Martha," Gabriella recounted. "And was it this Martha who took you to that cabin yesterday?" he asked. "Yes, she said we were going to live there because she didn't have money for rent in the city anymore. But when we got there, she said she was going to get water and told me to wait." "But she never came back," Gabriella explained, her voice starting to fail at the end. Andrew took a deep breath and rubbed his face hard, as if trying to control the rising anger. "Did she hit you?" he asked, looking directly into her eyes. Gabriella looked away and took a moment to answer, because she was ashamed to talk about it. "Sometimes, when she got upset," she admitted. "And did she give you food every day?" Andrew continued. "Not always. Sometimes she forgot or said there wasn't any," Gabriella replied. Andrew closed his eyes for a second, and when he opened them again, they were red. "Gabriella, I am not going to let you go back to that woman." "I won't let you go through that again," he said, his voice firm and decisive. "But what if she looks for me?" Gabriella asked, afraid. "If she looks for you, I will handle it. But I highly doubt she'll show up, because anyone who abandons a child the way she abandoned you isn't interested in taking care of them." Andrew said, and the truth of those words hurt, but at the same time brought a strange relief. They finished breakfast in silence, and Andrew got up to collect the dishes, taking everything to the sink. "I need to go out today to sort some things out. I'm going to the courthouse to see what needs to be done to keep you here legally," he explained while washing the dishes. "Are you going to leave me here alone?" she asked, feeling panic rise. "No. You'll stay with Mrs. Celia, who is the woman who takes care of the house. She comes every morning and stays until late afternoon," Andrew replied. "Is she nice?" Gabriella wanted to know. "She's very nice. You'll like her," he assured her. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang and Andrew went to the door to open it. Gabriella heard voices coming from the entrance hall, and then a short, plump woman appeared, with grey hair pulled back in a bun and a floral apron tied around her waist. She had small, kind eyes and a wide smile that showed her white teeth. "Mrs. Celia, this is Gabriella," Andrew introduced. "Hello, sweetie." "What a beautiful girl," Mrs. Celia said, bending down to be at her height. "Hi," Gabriella replied shyly. "Mrs. Celia, I need to leave now, but I'll be back before lunch." "Call me if anything happens," Andrew said, grabbing his car keys. "Go ahead." "I'll take good care of her," Mrs. Celia assured him. Andrew knelt in front of Gabriella and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll be back soon. Stay here with Mrs. Celia, and if you need anything, just ask, okay?" he said. "Aye," she replied, feeling a pang in her chest because she didn't want him to leave. He left through the garage door, and the sound of the car starting echoed in the house. Gabriella stood in the middle of the kitchen, looking at Mrs. Celia, who smiled again. "Come here, sweetie. I'll show you the whole house, and then we'll see what you want to do. Sound good?" she said, extending her hand. Gabriella took her hand, which was soft and warm, and the two left the kitchen together. Mrs. Celia showed her the living room with the big couches, the dining room with a long table, the office with shelves full of books, the guest bathroom with a large mirror, and the laundry room with machines Gabriella had never seen in her life. "This house is really big," she commented, impressed. "It is." Andrew has lived here alone for about 3 years, ever since his mother passed away, Mrs. Celia shared as they went up the stairs. "He doesn't have anyone else?" Gabriella asked. "He has a younger brother who lives in another city, but they don't talk much," Mrs. Celia explained. They reached the second floor, and Mrs. Celia showed her the other bedrooms, which were all empty and tidy. She showed Andrew's room, which was huge, with a balcony overlooking the garden. "Now tell me, do you like to cook?" Mrs. Celia asked as they went back downstairs. "I've never really cooked. I just heated up leftovers," Gabriella admitted. "Then today you're going to learn. I'm going to bake a chocolate cake, and you're going to help me," Mrs. Celia said excitedly. They spent the entire morning in the kitchen, and Gabriella learned how to crack eggs without dropping shells, how to sift the flour, and how to mix everything slowly. Her small hands gripped the wooden spoon tightly as she stirred the shiny brown batter that smelled of cocoa. "You're good at this," Mrs. Celia complimented. "Really?" Gabriella asked, her eyes shining. "Really? You have a knack for the kitchen," Mrs. Celia confirmed, placing the pan in the oven. While the cake baked, they sat at the table, and Mrs. Celia asked simple questions about things Gabriella liked to do. She answered everything honestly, saying she could read a little but not much because she had stopped going to school when her mother got sick. "School is important, sweetie. You need to study to have a better future," Mrs. Celia said kindly. The smell of the baking cake filled the entire house, and when the timer beeped, Mrs. Celia took the pan out of the oven, revealing a perfect, tall, fluffy cake. "Look how beautiful it turned out," she said proudly. Gabriella smiled and felt a strange happiness grow inside her chest. It was the first time she had done something that turned out right. The sound of the garage door opening echoed through the house, and seconds later, Andrew entered the kitchen, carrying 2 large shopping bags in his hands. He stopped when he saw the cake on the counter and smiled. "That smells amazing. Who made this?" he asked. "Gabriella helped me," Mrs. Celia replied. "Seriously?" "It looks great," Andrew said, looking at her with a smile on his face. Gabriella felt her cheeks warm and looked away, embarrassed but happy. "I brought some things for you," Andrew said, placing the bags on the table. Gabriella approached curiously and saw that inside there were new folded clothes, colorful jeans, t-shirts, a winter jacket, brand new white sneakers, socks, all in her size. "All this is from me?" she asked, incredulous. "All of it?" I asked the lady at the store for help and she picked out a few things, Andrew explained. But that must have cost a lot of money, Gabriella said, worried. Don't worry about that. You needed new clothes, he replied. Gabriella didn't know what to say, so she just stared at the clean, colorful clothes. No one had ever bought new clothes for her before. Go try them on and see if they fit, Andrew encouraged. Gabriella grabbed the bags and ran upstairs to the room. She tried on every piece in front of the mirror, and everything fit perfectly. She came back down wearing dark blue jeans and a light pink t-shirt with a star design on the front. The white sneakers squeaked on the wooden floor. It looks perfect, Andrew said when he saw her. Thank you, Gabriella said, and this time she managed to look him in the eyes. They ate lunch together at the big table, and Mrs. Celia had prepared rice, beans, boiled potatoes, and seasoned roast chicken. Everything was delicious, and Gabriella ate slowly, savoring every bite. After lunch, Andrew said he needed to talk to her again, and the two went to the living room, where they sat on the large sofa. Gabriella, this morning I went to the courthouse and talked to some people about your situation, he began. And what did they say? She asked nervously. They said that for you to stay here with me legally, I need to file for temporary custody. That means the court will authorize you to live here while they investigate what happened, Andrew explained. What if they decide I have to go back to Martha? Gabriella asked, feeling fear tighten her throat. I will do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen. I will show them that you cannot return to a person who abandoned you, Andrew guaranteed. Do you really want me to stay here? She asked in a low voice. Yes, I do, Gabriella. I know this all happened very fast, but yesterday when I saw you alone on that road, I felt like I needed to help you, and now I can't imagine sending you away, he replied sincerely. Gabriella felt her eyes fill with tears, but this time it wasn't from sadness but from a feeling she couldn't name, but which was good and warm. I want to stay here with you, she said, and her voice came out firm for the first time. Andrew smiled and lightly stroked her head. Then it's decided. You're going to stay here and we'll sort everything out properly, he said, his voice carrying a determination that left no room for doubt. The following days passed with a strange speed. Gabriella woke up every morning in the comfortable room, had breakfast with Andrew, and spent the mornings with Mrs. Celia, learning to cook and care for the garden plants. A week after she arrived, Andrew walked into the living room where she was reading a children's storybook. Gabriella, tomorrow we have a hearing at the courthouse. It's a meeting with a judge who will decide on the temporary custody, he explained, his face serious. Do I have to go? She asked, feeling her stomach churn. Yes, you do. The judge will want to talk to you to understand what happened and know what you want, Andrew replied. What if I say something wrong? Gabriella questioned fearfully. There's no such thing as saying something wrong. You just need to tell the truth the way you remember it, he advised, placing his hand on her shoulder. Will you be in there with me? She wanted to know. Yes, I will. I won't leave you alone for a moment, Andrew guaranteed. That night she barely slept, tossing and turning in bed, imagining what the meeting with the judge would be like. When the sun began to rise, she was already awake, sitting in bed, hugging her knees. The trip to the courthouse lasted 40 minutes because traffic was heavy. Gabriella spent the whole time looking out the window, watching the city wake up. The courthouse building was large and old, with columns in the front and a wide staircase. Andrew parked and the two got out. He held her hand as they climbed the steps. Inside the building, many people were walking back and forth. There were lawyers in suits talking, women crying on benches, and children running through the corridors. Andrew stopped at an information desk and spoke to a woman who pointed them to the 3rd floor. They took the elevator up and exited into a quieter hallway. It's here, Andrew said, stopping in front of a door labeled Juvenile and Family Court. They entered a small waiting room with plastic chairs and a water fountain in the corner. Andrew sat down and pulled Gabriella to sit beside him. She stared at the floor, trying to calm her heart, which was beating too fast. After 20 minutes, a door opened, and a woman with glasses called Andrew's name. They stood up and followed the woman down a corridor to a smaller room with a round table in the center. The woman asked them to sit and said the judge would arrive in a few minutes. The door opened again, and a man in his 60s with gray hair and glasses entered. He wore the black robe over his suit. Good morning, "I am Judge Harrison," he said, sitting down. "Good morning," Andrew replied. "You are Gabriella, correct?" The judge asked, looking at her with a gentle smile. "Yes, sir," she replied softly. "You don't need to call me sir. You can just call me Harrison," he said, trying to put her at ease. The judge opened a folder and took out some papers, which he organized on the table. "Mr. Andrew, can you explain how you met Gabriella?" he asked. Andrew recounted the entire story, from the moment he was returning from the meeting to the moment he saw Gabriella alone next to the cabin. He explained that he stopped to see if she was okay and discovered she had been left there by her stepmother, who never returned. He said he brought her home because he couldn't leave her alone in that dangerous place. The judge listened in silence, making notes. When Andrew finished, he turned to Gabriella. "Now I need to talk to you, Gabriella. Is that all right?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "Tell me what your life was like before you went to that cabin," the judge requested. Gabriella took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice low but steady. She recounted that her mother had died 2 years ago and that since then she had been living with her stepmother, who didn't like her. She said that often she went without food and that she was hit when she was slow to do chores. The judge listened attentively, and Gabriella saw his eyes grow sadder. "And on the day you went to the cabin, what exactly happened?" he asked. "Martha said we were going to live there because she didn't have money anymore. We hitchhiked, and when we arrived, she told me to get out with the suitcase and said she was going to get water. She told me to wait, but she never came back," Gabriella explained, her voice starting to tremble. "How long did you wait?" he wanted to know. "I don't know exactly, but the sun was high when she left, and it was almost dark when Andrew arrived," Gabriella replied. "And were you afraid?" The judge continued. "I was very afraid. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know anyone in that place," she admitted. "Gabriella, answer me one thing honestly. Do you want to go back to your stepmother's house?" the judge asked, looking deep into her eyes. "No, I don't want to go back," she replied without hesitation. "Why?" He wanted to know. "Because she doesn't like me and I'm afraid of her, and because she left me alone and drove away," Gabriella explained. "And do you like being at Andrew's house?" the judge asked. "I like it very much. He is good to me and treats me well. I feel safe there," she replied. The judge was silent for a moment and then tapped the gavel on the table. "I am going to grant temporary custody to Mr. Andrew for a period of 6 months, he declared. Gabriella felt her heart leap, and Andrew squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Your Honor," he said, relieved. They left the room and walked back down the corridor. Only when they got into the car did Andrew let out a long sigh. "We did it, Gabriella." "You're staying with me," he said, turning to look at her. "Really?" she asked. "Really," he confirmed, and Gabriella began to cry from relief and happiness. They returned home, and Mrs. Celia was waiting anxiously at the door. When she heard the news, she hugged Gabriella so tightly that she almost squeezed the air out of her lungs. "What a blessing, sweetie." "What a blessing," she repeated, her voice choked with emotion. That night, they celebrated with a special dinner that Mrs. Celia prepared. Meat lasagna with melted cheese on top. And for dessert, there was creamy flan. After dinner, Andrew called Gabriella to sit with him on the sofa. "Now that you're really staying here, we need to think about some important things," he began. "What things?" she asked. "First, you need to go back to school. Education is fundamental, and you've lost too much time already," he said. "I want to go back." "I like to study," she replied, excited. "That's great. Tomorrow I'll go to the neighborhood school to enroll you," Andrew said. "And there's one more thing. I want you to know that you can count on me for everything. If you have a problem, a question, anything at all, I want you to come talk to me," he said. Looking into her eyes, I promise," Gabriella replied. "And finally, I know this is all very new, but I want you to feel at home here. This place is yours now too," Andrew concluded. Gabriella felt her chest tighten with emotion, and without thinking much, she threw herself into his embrace. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me. I'm the one who thanks you for trusting me," he replied. The following weeks were a period of adjustment. Andrew kept his promise and enrolled Gabriella in a private school near the house. On the first day, she was nervous because she didn't know anyone and was afraid she wouldn't be able to keep up with the classes since she was behind. The teacher, Miss Miller was kind and introduced her to the class, explaining that she was a new student who needed help adjusting. At first it was difficult because the other children already had their groups of friends, and Gabriella sat alone on a bench during recess, watching the others play. But slowly a girl named Lily started sitting near her and striking up conversations. They discovered they liked the same things, and in a short time they became inseparable friends. At home, Gabriella helped Mrs. Celia with chores and continued learning to cook. She discovered she enjoyed working with dough and made bread and cakes that got better and better. Andrew always complimented her and asked for seconds, making her feel proud. 3 months after the hearing, a social worker came for the first visit. She was a young woman with an easy smile who introduced herself as Sarah. She talked to Gabriella alone, asking how she was feeling, if she liked school, and if Andrew was treating her well. Gabriella answered everything honestly, saying she was happy. Then Sarah talked to Andrew and Mrs. Celia and made notes on a clipboard. Before leaving, she said she would return in 2 more months and that everything was great for now. Time passed, and Gabriella transformed from a frightened girl into a healthy, happy child. She gained weight and her face became fuller and rosy. Her hair grew long and shiny, and Mrs. Celia braided it differently every day. She learned to laugh loudly and play without fear. She learned that she could ask for things without being ashamed. One night, Andrew came into her room at bedtime and sat on the edge of the bed. As had become customary, "Gabriella, I want to ask you something," he said, and his voice sounded strange. "You can ask," she replied. "How do you feel about living here?" Truly, without lying, he wanted to know. "I feel happy. I feel safe and I feel loved," she replied. And it was the first time she had used that word. Andrew smiled, and his eyes became bright. "I love you too, Gabriella. You brought a light into this house that has been empty for a long time," he confessed. "Do you think Martha might come back one day and take me away?" Gabriella asked, afraid. "No, she won't take you. I will do everything to ensure you stay here with me forever. Andrew guaranteed, forever," she repeated. "Forever," he confirmed, placing his hand on her head affectionately. The following months brought a routine she never imagined she could have. She woke up early every day, got dressed in the clothes Mrs. Celia had set aside, and went down to have breakfast with Andrew, who was always reading the newspaper. They talked about the day before, and what was going to happen on the day that was starting. Then Andrew drove her to school and waved goodbye. At school, Gabriella had become a dedicated student. She arrived early and sat in the front row because she wanted to learn everything. Ms. Miller noticed her effort and began to give her special attention, helping her with the more difficult subjects. Lily continued to be her best friend, and the two did homework together in the library. One day, Ms. Miller asked Gabriella to stay after class. When all the other children had left, the teacher sat in the chair next to her and smiled. "Gabriella, I wanted to tell you that I am very proud of your progress," she said. "Really, teacher?" Gabriella asked, her eyes shining. "Really? You arrived here with great difficulty, and in just a few months you managed to catch up with the class," the teacher assured her. "I really like to study." "It's just that before I couldn't," Gabriella explained. "I know your story, Gabriella. Andrew talked to me when he enrolled you," the teacher said softly. "Sometimes I'm still afraid that everything will end," Gabriella admitted quietly. "That won't happen. You are in a safe place now, and you have people who truly care about you," the teacher guaranteed. Gabriella left that conversation feeling lighter. When Andrew picked her up, she told him everything and saw the pride stamped on his face. "I always knew you were smart. You just needed a chance," he said while driving. "Thank you for giving me that chance," Gabriella thanked him. "You don't need to keep thanking me." "I did what any decent person would do," Andrew replied. "But not everyone would. Most people drove past that road and no one stopped," she countered. Andrew was silent because he knew she was right. When they arrived home, Mrs. Celia was finishing lunch and the smell of food filled their noses. She had prepared spaghetti with homemade tomato sauce and meatballs. For dessert, there was strawberry gelatin with whipped cream, which Gabriella loved. After lunch, Andrew said he needed to talk to her again, and the two went to the living room, where they sat on the big sofa. "Gabriella, today I went to the courthouse and talked to some people about your situation," he began. "What things?" she asked. "First, you need to go back to school. Education is fundamental, and you've lost too much time already, he said. I want to go back. I like to study, she replied, excited. That's great. Tomorrow I'll go to the neighborhood school to enroll you, Andrew said. And there's one more thing. I want you to know that you can count on me for everything. If you have a problem, a question, anything at all, I want you to come talk to me, he said, looking into her eyes. I promise, Gabriella replied. And finally, I know this is all very new, but I want you to feel at home here. This place is yours now too, Andrew completed. Gabriella felt her chest tighten with emotion, and without thinking much, she threw herself into his embrace. Thank you for saving me, she whispered. You don't need to thank me. I'm the one who thanks you for trusting me, he replied. The following weeks were a period of adjustment. Andrew kept his promise and enrolled Gabriella in a private school near the house. On the first day, she was nervous because she didn't know anyone and was afraid she wouldn't be able to keep up with the classes since she was behind. The teacher, Ms. Miller, was kind and introduced her to the class, explaining that she was a new student who needed help adjusting. At first, it was difficult because the other children already had their groups of friends, and Gabriella sat alone on a bench during recess, watching the others play. But slowly, a girl named Lily started sitting near her and striking up conversations. They discovered they liked the same things, and in a short time they became inseparable friends. At home, Gabriella helped Mrs. Celia with chores and continued learning to cook. She discovered she enjoyed working with dough and made bread and cakes that got better and better. Andrew always complimented her and asked for seconds, making her feel proud. 3 months after the hearing, a social worker came for the first visit. She was a young woman with an easy smile who introduced herself as Sarah. She talked to Gabriella alone, asking how she was feeling, if she liked school, and if Andrew was treating her well. Gabriella answered everything honestly, saying she was happy. Then Sarah talked to Andrew and Mrs. Celia and made notes on a clipboard. Before leaving, she said she would return in 2 more months and that everything was great for now. Time passed and Gabriella transformed from a frightened girl into a healthy, happy child. She gained weight and her face became fuller and rosy. Her hair grew long and shiny, and Mrs. Celia braided it differently every day. She learned to laugh loudly and play without fear. She learned that she could ask for things without being ashamed. One night, Andrew came into her room at bedtime and sat on the edge of the bed, as had become customary. Gabriella, I want to ask you something, he said, and his voice sounded strange. You can ask, she replied. How do you feel about living here? Truly, without lying, he wanted to know. I feel happy. I feel safe and I feel loved, she replied, and it was the first time she had used that word. Andrew smiled, and his eyes became bright. I love you too, Gabriella. You brought a light into this house that has been empty for a long time, he confessed. Do you think Martha might come back one day and take me away? Gabriella asked, afraid. No, she won't take you. I will do everything to ensure you stay here with me forever. Andrew guaranteed forever, she repeated. Forever, he confirmed, placing his hand on her head affectionately. The following months brought a routine she never imagined she could have. She woke up early every day, got dressed in the clothes Mrs. Celia had set aside, and went down to have breakfast with Andrew, who was always reading the newspaper. They talked about the day before and what was going to happen on the day that was starting. Then Andrew drove her to school and waved goodbye. At school, Gabriella had become a dedicated student. She arrived early and sat in the front row because she wanted to learn everything. Ms. Miller noticed her effort and began to give her special attention, helping her with the more difficult subjects. Lily continued to be her best friend, and the two did homework together in the library. One day, Ms. Miller asked Gabriella to stay after class. When all the other children had left, the teacher sat in the chair next to her and smiled. Gabriella, I wanted to tell you that I am very proud of your progress, she said. Really, teacher? Gabriella asked, her eyes shining. Really? You arrived here with great difficulty, and in just a few months you managed to catch up with the class, the teacher assured her. I really like to study. It's just that before I couldn't, Gabriella explained. I know your story, Gabriella. Andrew talked to me when he enrolled you, the teacher said softly. Sometimes I'm still afraid that everything will end, Gabriella admitted quietly. That won't happen. You are in a safe place now, and you have people who truly care about you, the teacher guaranteed. Gabriella left that conversation feeling lighter. When Andrew picked her up, she told him everything and saw the pride stamped on his face. "I always knew you were smart. You just needed a chance," he said while driving. "Thank you for giving me that chance," Gabriella thanked him. "You don't need to keep thanking me." "I did what any decent person would do," Andrew replied. "But not everyone would. Most people drove past that road and no one stopped." She countered. Andrew was silent because he knew she was right. When they arrived home, Mrs. Celia was finishing lunch, and the smell of food filled their noses. She had prepared spaghetti with homemade tomato sauce and meatballs. For dessert, there was strawberry gelatin with whipped cream, which Gabriella loved. After lunch, Gabriella went up to her room to do her homework. She had to write an essay about family and spent a long time thinking before starting. She began writing with the blue pen in her notebook, the words coming out slowly at first, but then starting to flow naturally, telling how her life had been before and how it was now. She wrote about Andrew and how he had stopped to help, about Mrs. Celia and how she taught her recipes, about Ms. Miller and her endless patience, and about Leah and the friendship she offered. When she finished, she read the entire piece again. Her eyes stung not from sadness but from overwhelming gratitude. The following week, Ms. Miller asked a few students to read their essays aloud. Gabriella was one of the chosen ones. She was nervous at first, but as she began to read, she realized the classroom had fallen into complete silence. When she finished, tears were streaming down her face, and she saw that her teacher's eyes were red too. A few students started clapping, and soon the entire room erupted in applause. That day, when Andrew came to pick her up, Ms. Miller asked to speak with him quickly. They talked outside while Gabriella waited in the car, and she noticed Andrew wiping his eyes before he got back in. "The teacher showed me your essay," he said, sliding into the driver's seat. "Did you like it?" Gabriella asked. "I loved it." "You have a real talent for writing," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I just wrote what I felt," she explained. "And you write beautifully. Ms. Miller said you absolutely should keep writing," Andrew told her. "I will," Gabriella promised. Months passed and winter arrived, bringing cold and rain. Andrew bought Gabriella heavy coats and boots. They spent weekend nights watching movies wrapped in blankets, sharing hot popcorn. Mrs. Celia taught Gabriella how to make hearty soups and stews that warmed them right through. That day, second visit from social worker Sarah happened on a rainy Saturday morning. She arrived with a colorful umbrella and a warm smile. She spoke with Gabriella, who told her about school and her great grades. She spoke with Andrew, who showed her the report cards. She spoke with Mrs. Celia, who raved about the girl. "I have no doubt this is the best situation for Gabriella," Sarah said before leaving. "Does this mean everything will go smoothly at the final hearing?" Andrew asked. "I will submit an extremely favorable recommendation. The chances are excellent," Sarah explained. Andrew thanked her and closed the door after she left. He turned and saw Gabriella standing in the middle of the living room, looking at him with hope. "Did you hear what she said?" he asked. "I did," Gabriella replied. "We have the final hearing in 3 months, and after that you will officially be my daughter," Andrew said. It was the first time he had ever used that word. Gabriella felt something explode inside her chest, a happiness so huge it couldn't be contained. She ran and jumped into his arms. He caught her mid-air and spun her around, laughing. "Your real daughter?" she asked. "The real deal. I'm filing the adoption papers," Andrew confirmed. "Will I be able to call you Dad?" Gabriella wanted to know. "You can call me anything you want, but I would absolutely love for you to call me Dad," he replied, his voice trembling. Gabriella hugged Andrew with all her strength and repeated the word softly, as if testing it out. "Dad," she said, and the word sounded right and true. The next 3 months were spent preparing for the final hearing. Andrew hired a specialized attorney who prepared all the necessary documents, gathering school reports, photos showing their happy moments, and testimonials from Mrs. Celia and Ms. Miller. Gabriella remained focused on her studies, and at the end of the school year, received an honor roll certificate for having the best performance in her class. At the closing ceremony, she walked onto the auditorium stage to receive the certificate and saw Andrew in the audience, his eyes shining with pride, clapping louder than anyone else. Summer break began, and Andrew took 2 weeks off to take Gabriella on a trip. They went to the beach and stayed in a small beachfront hotel. She had never seen the ocean before and spent hours standing on the sand, watching the waves crash. Andrew taught her how to swim in the shallow water, and she laughed so hard she swallowed salt water. But she didn't stop giggling. They built sandcastles with towers and bridges, walked on the beach late in the afternoon as the sun set, painting the sky orange, and ate ice cream sitting on a bench, watching the vendors pass by. One night, while they were sitting on the room's balcony, watching the stars, Gabriella asked something she had kept bottled up for a long time. "Do you miss living alone?" She wanted to know. Andrew took a moment to answer, as if considering it carefully. "At first I thought I would. I had gotten used to the solitude, but now I can't imagine what it was like before you arrived," he said. "But your life changed so much because of me," Gabriella insisted. "It did. It changed completely and for the better," Andrew assured her. "How so for the better?" she asked. "Because before I was just existing. I woke up, worked, came home, and repeated it all without purpose. But now I have a reason to wake up every day. I have someone to take care of and someone who genuinely cares about me," he explained. "I care about you a lot," Gabriella said. "I know. And you have no idea how much that means to me," Andrew replied, resting his hand on her head. They returned from the trip tanned and happy. Mrs. Celia said they looked like a completely different pair. The final weeks before the hearing passed quickly. When the day arrived, Gabriella was nervous but not scared like the first time. They entered the familiar courthouse building, went up to the same floor, and waited in the same waiting room. Then they were called into the courtroom, where Judge Harrison was already waiting. Social worker Sarah and the attorney Andrew had hired were also present. "Good morning, everyone. Let's continue with the proceedings," the judge began. "I have read all the reports, and I must say I am very impressed with the child's progress," he said, smiling at Gabriella. "How are you feeling, Gabriella?" he asked. "I'm very happy, Judge Harrison," she replied. "And you want to continue living with Andrew?" he asked. "More than anything. He is the best thing that has ever happened in my life," she answered without hesitation. The judge looked at the papers again, and then at Andrew. "Mr. Andrew, I see here that you have filed a petition for adoption. Is that correct?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I would like to officially adopt Gabriella," Andrew confirmed. "And you understand that adoption is irreversible?" the judge questioned. "I understand perfectly, and that is exactly what I want," Andrew responded. The judge turned to Sarah. "Dr. Sarah, what is your recommendation?" he asked. "My recommendation is completely favorable. I have rarely seen such a successful adaptation. The child is healthy, happy, and loved," Sarah responded. The judge nodded and remained silent for a moment, looking at everyone. Then he struck the gavel on the desk, making a sharp, echoing sound. "Based on all the evidence presented, I grant permanent custody and authorize the adoption process. Mr. Andrew is now officially Gabriella's father," he declared. Gabriella felt tears stream down her face, and Andrew pulled her into a tight hug. The attorney shook his hand, offering congratulations. "Congratulations to both of you. Take care of each other," the judge said, standing up. They left that room with an official paper in their hands that changed everything. In the car, Andrew sat still for a moment without starting the engine, just staring at the document. "We did it," he finally said. "We did it, Dad," Gabriella repeated. And this time the word came out naturally. They returned home and found a surprise waiting. Mrs. Celia had organized a small celebration with the help of Leah and Leah's mother. There were colorful balloons hanging, a large chocolate cake with "Congratulations, family" written on the frosting, snacks and soda. "How did you know?" Andrew asked, surprised. "I called Mrs. Celia to let her know everything went well," Sarah confessed, appearing from behind them. It was an afternoon of celebration. Gabriella played with Leah in the yard while the adults talked. She opened presents and received books, nice clothes, and a red bicycle Andrew had hidden. When night fell and everyone had gone home, the house returned to silence, but it was a different kind of silence, full of promises. That night before bed, Andrew went into Gabriella's room and sat on the edge of her bed. "Dad, can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask anything you want," he replied. "Why did you really stop that day?" She wanted to know. Andrew took a deep breath and looked out the window where the full moon illuminated the yard. "I stopped because my mother always taught me that you can't turn your back on someone who needs help. She used to say that every person who crosses your path is there for a reason," he explained. "Your mother must have been a very good person," Gabriella commented. She was. She was incredible, and I think she would be very proud to know that I found you," Andrew said, his voice catching. "Do you think she's watching us from up there?" Gabriella asked. "I'm sure she is, and she's smiling," he replied. Gabriella snuggled under the comforter and said one last thing before falling asleep. "I love you." "Dad, thank you for saving me," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart. And if anyone saved anyone here, it was both of us saving each other," he replied, kissing her forehead before leaving. Life continued with a normalcy Gabriella had never experienced. She woke up every day knowing exactly what was going to happen, and this predictability was now comforting. The new school year began, and she entered the next grade with confidence. Her grades remained high, and Ms. Miller always praised her effort. Leah remained her best friend, and now they spent weekends at each other's houses doing schoolwork and watching movies. Andrew continued working, but now organized his schedule to be more present. On weekends, they did things together, like going to the movies, the park, or simply staying home. Gabriella had developed the habit of writing in a diary Andrew had given her. Every night before bed, she wrote down the day's events and her feelings. She wrote about classes, conversations with Leah, family dinners, and moments when she felt grateful. One day, Andrew came home early from work with a serious expression. On his face, he asked Gabriella to sit with him in the living room because he needed to talk about something important. She felt her heart race with fear but tried to calm down. "Gabriella, I received a call from the attorney today," he began. "And what did he say?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Marta was located. She's living in another city and was notified about the adoption process," Andrew explained. Gabriella felt her blood run cold. "Is she going to try to take me back?" she asked, panicked. "No, she signed a waiver giving up all rights to you," Andrew quickly replied. "Then why are you telling me this?" Gabriella wanted to know. "Because I thought you had the right to know. I don't want to hide anything from you," he explained. "Did she say anything? Did she apologize?" Gabriella asked. "No, she just signed the papers and that was it. The attorney said she didn't even want to talk," Andrew recounted. "So she really doesn't care about me," Gabriella said, her voice low. "Her lack of love says nothing about you and everything about her. Some people just can't love and that's their problem," Andrew said, holding her hands. "But it's hard not to wonder what I did wrong," Gabriella admitted. "You did nothing wrong, Gabriella. You were just a child who needed care and she didn't know how to give it. But now you have a real family that truly loves you," Andrew assured her. Gabriella threw herself into his arms and cried. It wasn't a desperate cry, but a cry of release. Andrew held her until there were no more tears left. "I don't want to think about her anymore," Gabriella said when she could speak again. "Then don't. You owe her nothing. And you can move on with your life without looking back," Andrew agreed. "Thank you for telling me. Even though it was hard," she thanked him. "I will always be honest with you, no matter how difficult it is," he promised. The following days were an adjustment. Gabriella was quieter, and Leah noticed. During a break in class, she pulled her friend aside. "My stepmother was found, and she officially gave up her rights to me," Gabriella confided. "And how are you feeling?" Leah asked. "I don't know. It's strange because it's a relief, but it also hurts," Gabriella explained. "I'm so sorry, but you know you have people who truly love you, right?" Leah said. "I know. Andrew is amazing, and I have you, the best friend ever," Gabriella replied with a small smile. "I'll always be here for you," Leah guaranteed, and the two hugged while the other children ran around them. As the days passed, Gabriella returned to normal and realized that the news had actually been a liberation. Knowing there was no longer any tie to her stepmother meant she could finally close that chapter and focus on the present. She started writing in her diary more frequently, and the words were now full of hope. Winter passed and spring arrived, bringing new flowers in the garden and longer days. Gabriella had grown a few inches, And Andrew had to buy her new clothes. She was 10 years old now and starting to develop her own interests, discovering she loved to draw and had a knack for creating imaginary characters and settings. Andrew enrolled her in a Saturday art class at a school near their home. At first, she was shy because all the other students seemed to draw better. But the teacher, Julian, noticed her hidden talent and began to encourage her, showing her new techniques. "You have a unique eye, Gabriella. The way you see the world is different and special," Julian said during one class. "Thank you, Professor," she replied, blushing. "I mean it. You should keep developing this because it could become something very big," he insisted. Gabriella took those words home and showed her drawings to Andrew, who was impressed. He framed some of the best ones and hung them on his office wall, saying he wanted to see her work every day. Months went by, and the routine remained steady. Gabriella's grades stayed high, and she had become a reference in her class. Leah and she remained inseparable and were already planning to attend the same college in the future. Andrew received praise at work and had been promoted to project manager, which meant more responsibility but also more money. One evening, Andrew called Gabriella for a serious talk after dinner. They sat on the couch, and he seemed nervous, fidgeting with his hands. "Gabriella, I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how you'll react," he began. "Go ahead, Dad, what is it?" she encouraged him. "I met someone," he finally said. Gabriella was silent, processing the information. She hadn't considered the possibility of Andrew getting involved with someone because it had always seemed like the two of them were enough. "Met someone how?" she asked. "A co-worker. Her name is Patricia and we've been going out for lunch and talking," Andrew explained. "And you want to date her?" Gabriella wanted to know. "I would like to." "Yes, but only if you're comfortable with it. Because you are always my priority," he assured her. Gabriella thought for a moment about how she felt. Her first reaction had been fear of being replaced. But when she looked at Andrew's face and saw the anxiety in his eyes, she realized he genuinely cared about her opinion. "You deserve to be happy, Dad. If this Patricia makes you happy, then I support it," she said. "Seriously?" he asked, relieved. "Seriously. Just promise me one thing," Gabriella requested. "Anything you want," Andrew replied. "Promise me nothing will change between us," she said. "I promise nothing will change. You will always be my daughter and my priority," Andrew guaranteed, pulling her into a hug. A few weeks later, Andrew brought Patricia home for dinner. Gabriella was nervous and had helped Mrs. Celia prepare everything, setting the table beautifully with flowers in the center. When the doorbell rang, she took a deep breath and went to the door with Andrew. Patricia was a woman in her mid-30s with straight brown hair to her shoulders, green eyes and a gentle smile. She wore dress pants and a light blue blouse and carried a box of chocolates, which she extended to Gabriella. "Hi, Gabriella, it's a pleasure to meet you. Andrew talks about you all the time," she said in a soft voice. "Hi, nice to meet you too," Gabriella replied, taking the box. They went inside and sat in the living room to talk. Patricia asked questions about school, what Gabriella liked to do and about her drawings, and she seemed genuinely interested. During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally. Gabriella noticed that Patricia was smart and funny, and that Andrew smiled in a different way when he was near her, a lighter, more carefree smile. After dessert, Patricia helped clear the table, and when she left, she said goodbye to Gabriella with a light hug. "So what did you think?" Andrew asked after Patricia had gone. "She seems nice." "I liked her," Gabriella admitted. "That's great, because she really liked you too," Andrew said, relieved. The following months brought subtle but significant changes. Patricia started coming over more often, always respectful and gentle with Gabriella. She took Gabriella and Leah out for ice cream when Andrew worked late, helped with math homework, and watched the movies Gabriella chose. Gabriella realized she didn't mind Patricia's presence. In fact, she started to enjoy having her around. It was different from having a mother, because she had already had one, but it was nice to have another caring female figure. Patricia taught her things Andrew didn't know how to do, like elaborate braids or choosing clothes that matched better. A year after they met, Andrew called Gabriella and Patricia for a special conversation. They sat in the living room, and he held a small box in his hand. "Patricia, I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Andrew asked, opening the small box that revealed a gold ring. Patricia covered her face with her hands, and her eyes filled with tears. She looked at Andrew and then at Gabriella, as if asking for permission. Gabriella smiled and nodded. "Yes, I accept," Patricia replied, and Andrew placed the ring on her finger. They hugged, and Gabriella felt sincere happiness. Then Andrew turned to her. "Gabriella, Patricia is officially going to be part of our family now, and I wanted to know how you feel," he said. "I feel happy, Dad. Patricia is a good person, and I know she makes you happy," Gabriella replied. "And Gabriella, I want you to know that I will never try to take your mother's place, but I really want to be part of your life and watch you grow up," Patricia said. Her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you, Patricia. I want you to be part of our family too," Gabriella thanked her. The wedding preparations began, and Patricia made sure to include Gabriella in every decision. They chose the flowers, the cake design, the dinner menu, and even Gabriella's dress, as she was going to be a junior bridesmaid. The wedding day arrived on a beautiful, sunny morning. The church was decorated with white and lilac flowers. The pews were full of friends and family. Gabriella looked beautiful in a light lilac dress, with a white sash at the waist. She held the basket of rose petals and walked down the aisle, tossing the flowers as everyone watched and smiled. Andrew stood at the altar in a dark grey suit. When Patricia entered the door on her father's arm, wearing a simple and elegant white dress, his face lit up in a way Gabriella had never seen. The ceremony was moving, and when the officiant said they could kiss, everyone applauded. The reception was lively, with good music, delicious food, and lots of dancing. Gabriella danced with Andrew to a slow song, and he whispered in her ear, "Thank you for accepting Patricia into our lives. You are incredible," he said. "Thank you for showing me what a real family is," she replied. Life continued with the new configuration. Patricia moved into the house bringing some of her things, always asking if Gabriella minded, before changing anything. They developed their own routine of watching shows together on nights Andrew worked late, doing their nails on Sundays, and sharing secrets. 2 years after the wedding, on a Sunday morning, Patricia and Andrew called Gabriella for another special conversation. "Gabriella, we have some news for you," Andrew began. "What news?" she asked, curious. "I'm pregnant," Patricia announced with a huge smile. Gabriella froze for a second, processing, and then a huge smile spread across her face too. "Seriously? I'm going to have a brother or sister?" she asked excitedly. "You are? What do you think?" Andrew wanted to know. "I think it's amazing." "I always wanted a sibling," Gabriella replied, getting up and hugging them both. The months of pregnancy were spent preparing. Gabriella helped set up the baby's room, painting the wall light yellow, folding the tiny clothes, and reading books about caring for newborns. When they found out it would be a girl, Gabriella suggested the name Alice, and Patricia and Andrew loved it. Alice was born early on a Tuesday morning. When Gabriella went to the hospital to meet her sister, she felt a wave of love so immense it surprised her. The baby was tiny, with closed eyes and clenched fists. When Gabriella held her for the first time, feeling the light weight in her arms, she knew she would protect that child with everything she had. "Hi, Alice. I'm your big sister, and I'm going to take care of you forever," she whispered. Andrew and Patricia were watching, their eyes teary, and Mrs. Celia, who had also come to the hospital, was crying with emotion. It was a perfect scene of a family that had formed in different ways but was real and strong. Gabriella was 13 now and had matured a lot. She continued to get high grades and helped at home, taking care of Alice when her parents needed it. She changed diapers, prepared bottles, and rocked her sister when she cried. She discovered she had a way with children and enjoyed caring for them. One afternoon, while she was rocking Alice to sleep, Patricia sat down beside her. "Gabriella, I wanted to thank you," she said. "Thank me for what?" Gabriella asked. "For accepting me into your life." "I know it wasn't easy," Patricia explained. "You deserved this chance." "You've always been nice to me," Gabriella replied. And I want you to know that I consider you my daughter too. I know you already had a mother, and no one will replace her, but in my heart, you are my daughter just as much as Alice is, Patricia confessed. Gabriella felt her eyes sting and put her arm around Patricia in a careful hug. Thank you for taking care of my dad, and for taking care of me too, she said. That night, after putting Alice in her crib, Gabriella went to her room and opened her diary. She flipped through the initial pages, reading about the difficult days, and then moved to the more recent ones, full of gratitude and joy. She picked up her pen and began writing a new entry that summarized everything she was feeling. She wrote about how her life had completely changed since that day on the dirt road, about how she had gained a father who loved her unconditionally, a stepmother who had become a second mother, a sister she would protect forever, and about how she had learned that family isn't just blood, but choice, commitment, and true love. When she finished, she closed the diary and looked out the window, seeing the garden illuminated by the moonlight. She thought about everything she had lived through, how difficult it had been, but also how every tear, every fear, every moment of uncertainty had been worth it. She went downstairs and found Andrew in the kitchen making coffee, even though it was late. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Alice cried, and now I'm wide awake," he explained. "Can I have some coffee with you?" Gabriella asked. "You sure can. Let's sit and talk for a bit," he accepted. They sat at the table with steaming mugs in their hands and remained in comfortable silence until Gabriella broke it. "Dad, have you ever thought about what your life would be like if you hadn't stopped on that road that day?" she asked. "I have thought about it, and I always come to the conclusion that it would be an empty, meaningless life," he replied. "I think about it too, and I get scared just imagining it," she admitted. "But I did stop, and you are here. And we built all of this together," Andrew said, "and I am so grateful for that." "You truly saved my life," Gabriella affirmed. "And you saved mine too, Gabriella." "You gave me purpose and a reason to wake up happy every day," he responded. They finished their coffee and went up to their respective rooms. Gabriella lay in bed, looking at the ceiling, thinking about everything she had lived and everything she still had to live. She had just entered her teenage years and knew many challenges were still ahead. But now she was certain she wasn't alone. She closed her eyes and, before falling asleep, whispered a phrase that had become her personal prayer. "Thank you for everything I have and for everything I have become," she said. Sleep came peacefully and deep. The following years brought maturity and profound transformations. Gabriella entered high school with exemplary grades, and her drawings gained recognition in student competitions. Alice grew quickly, and by age 3, she was speaking in full sentences, calling Gabriella Gabby. The two had developed a strong bond. In her second year of high school, Gabriella started volunteering at a non-profit organization that helped vulnerable children. She taught drawing classes on Saturdays, and when she looked at those children, she saw a bit of her past self. "Why did you decide to volunteer here?" a coordinator asked. "Because I know what it's like to need help and not have it, and now that I can help, I want to do that for other kids," Gabriella explained. "You have a difficult history?" the coordinator wanted to know. "I do. I was abandoned when I was little, but I was rescued by an incredible person," Gabriella recounted. The volunteer work became an important part of her routine, and Andrew always drove her, saying he was proud. When Gabriella turned 16, Andrew and Patricia organized a party. She received beautiful gifts, but what moved her the most was a photo album Patricia had put together with pictures from the day she arrived until that moment. "Look how much you've changed," Patricia said, flipping through the pages. "I was so skinny and scared," Gabriella commented. "And now you are a beautiful, confident young woman," Patricia praised. "Thank you for being part of this transformation," Gabriella thanked her. In her senior year of high school, it was time to decide on a career. Gabriella was sure she wanted architecture because she loved the idea of creating spaces that made people feel welcomed, just as she had felt in the home Andrew offered. She studied intensely, and when the college entrance exam results came out, she had placed first. When she saw her name on the screen, she screamed with joy. "I passed. I got first place," she shouted, jumping up and down. Andrew and Patricia hugged her together. Alice, who was 5, also jumped, not quite understanding but happy. "I knew you could do it," Andrew said, his eyes shining. "Congratulations, my daughter. You deserve all the best," Patricia added. The first year of college was challenging but exciting. Gabriella dove into her studies with passion. In the middle of her second year, she was selected for an internship at a renowned architecture firm. The boss, Robert, noticed her talent within the first few weeks. "You have a unique eye for spaces," he commented. "It comes from my personal history. I know how much a space can make a difference in someone's life," Gabriella explained. When she was in her final year, Robert called her in. "Gabriella, when you graduate, I would like to hire you as a junior architect. You have immense talent," he offered. "Seriously, I would love to work here," she replied, emotional. Graduation arrived on a beautiful December night. When her name was called, she walked with her head held high. From the stage, she could see Andrew, Patricia, and Alice clapping. Andrew had tears streaming down his face and made no effort to hide them. When she received her diploma, she felt she had closed one cycle and was opening another full of possibilities. After the ceremony, Andrew made a toast. To Gabriella, who overcame everything life threw her way and became a brilliant professional, he said, raising his glass, "Thank you for everything you've done for me." "I wouldn't be here without you," Gabriella thanked them, her voice thick with emotion. The first months of working were intense but rewarding. One day, Robert called her in. "We have a client who specifically requested you for their project," he told her. "It's a non-profit that builds shelters for children. They want you to design a welcoming space," Robert explained. "I accept." "It would be an honor," she said. Gabriella dedicated herself to that project with passion. She visited the site, talked to the people in charge, and drew every detail, aiming to create a place that conveyed security and hope. When she presented the project, everyone was moved. "This is perfect," the director said. "I put a lot of myself into this project because I know what it's like to be a child who needs a safe haven," Gabriella confessed. When the shelter was finished, she went to the inauguration and brought Andrew, Patricia, and Alice. They saw the beautiful building with soft-colored walls and a garden full of flowers. A small girl approached her. "Did you make this house?" she asked. "I did." "Do you like it?" Gabriella replied, crouching down. "I like it a lot. It's the prettiest house I've ever seen," the girl said. The girl suddenly hugged Gabriella, and she felt tears rise because she saw in that child a reflection of who she had been. Andrew, watching from a distance, was also moved. "She transformed her pain into something beautiful for other people," Patricia commented. "She's incredible." "I couldn't be prouder," Andrew replied. In the following years, Gabriella's career took off. She specialized in projects focused on children and families, won important awards, but never lost her humility. Alice grew up and entered her teenage years full of talent. The two remained close. Andrew and Patricia aged happily together, watching their daughters become incredible women. On a special night when Gabriella was 28, Andrew gathered the whole family. "I was thinking, and I realized it's been 23 years since that day on the road," he began. "That's right. More than half my life," Gabriella said. "And that was the best day of my life, because it was the day I found you," Andrew confessed. "For me too. It was the day everything changed," Gabriella responded. Alice, who was 17, wanted to speak. "I know I wasn't there at the beginning, but I grew up seeing how much you love each other. And that taught me what a real family is," she said. They all hugged right there in the middle of the living room, feeling the strength of that bond built with love. Gabriella had become an accomplished professional, a beloved daughter, a present sister, and above all, a person who had transformed her pain into purpose. She looked back and saw the entire journey, from the scared little girl to the confident woman. The scar of abandonment still existed, but it had transformed into a mark of overcoming. That night before bed, Gabriella opened the old diary and read the first pages written in shaky handwriting. Then she skipped to the last ones, where the writing was firm. She picked up the pen and wrote one final entry about gratitude, about love, about family, about how she had learned that the past does not determine the future, and that every person has the power to rewrite their story. She closed the diary and looked out the window, seeing the city lights. She thought about the father who had stopped his car that afternoon, and decided to change everything. She thought about Patricia, who had agreed to share that love. She thought about Alice, who had brought even more light. She smiled to herself and felt a deep peace. She had learned that family isn't about blood, but about choice, commitment, and being present. She lay down in bed and, before falling asleep, gave thanks for everything she had lived through, because every difficulty had been necessary to mold her into the strong person she had become. The abandoned girl no longer existed because she had been transformed by love into a complete woman who dedicated her life to creating spaces where other children could feel as safe as she had felt when Andrew reached out his hand and promised to take care of her forever.